Once in a generation, sport will allow a flower to blossom. They'll rise up high above all the others, flaunting their colours and making an impact on so many people. But with golf, we see so many flowers making it to the top. So what makes this one so special? In 1970, San Diego, California, a fighter pilot and an Olympic basketball player gave birth to their baby boy, Philip Alfred Mickelson. With the courage of his father and skill of his mother, Phil was already one step ahead of most. He was introduced to the game very early on. His grandfather was a caddy at Pebble Beach and was the first to introduce baby Phil to the world of golf. But it would be a while before Phil could swing a club, as he couldn't even walk yet. Sat on the floor looking up at his dad, just counting down the days before he could swing like him. At 18 months old on a huge spinning rock, baby Phil only had eyes for one thing. After several attempts at swinging his dad's clubs, it was apparent these weren't going to work. His dad chopped one in half and gifted it to him, and Phil just could not stop swinging. It took a moment to sink in at first what little Phil was doing, but with his right-handed cut-down club, he was swinging it the wrong way. See, all this time Phil was watching his dad hit balls. He'd very cleverly mirrored what he was seeing, and therefore programmed his mind to swing it the other way. Not too much of a problem, but Phil already needed a new set of clubs. The Mickelsons were extremely lucky. Their father was an airline pilot and was home a lot of the time. This gave him plenty of time to teach his kids golf, and when he wasn't there, he built an incredible practice area in the garden for them to practice their short game. This is where Phil's magic with a wedge was unlocked. His mother used to say to him, for every hole-in-one he got, she would give him a dime. Phil's goal was to save up and buy his mum a Mercedes. It's safe to say, Phil was addicted. It's not uncommon for a child to get really invested into something, but Phil's mindset was different. At age 4, when he couldn't play golf today, he packed a bag of balls, swung it over a golf club, and ran away. When eventually picked up by a neighbouring greenkeeper, Phil's response to his parents was, yes, I'm good, but I need to be great. I need to practice every day, because if I'm not practicing, someone else out there is. Nobody taught him this way of thinking. This was just a kid that knew what he wanted from such an early age. At high school in San Diego, Phil was light years above the rest. He'd frequently opt out of playing in team events and chance his cards at the US Open qualifying instead. This opened the door for new kid on the block, Scott Peterson, a very talented young prospect 2 years younger than Phil, who was eventually convicted of murder and sentenced to death by lethal injection. After graduating high school, Mickelson enrolled into Arizona State University on a golf scholarship. It was here he became the face of amateur golf in the United States and was tipped to be the next best thing. It was easy to see why people thought this. During his time, he captured 3 NCAA individual championships and 3 Haskin Awards. That record still stands as the most individual championships alongside Ben Crenshaw. The winning never stopped, and Mickelson went down in history winning 16 times and helped the Sun Devils to the 1990 NCAA team title. After All-American honours in all 4 years, Mickelson had one last goal. He became the first left-hander to win the US amateur title, topping off an incredible amateur career. But before Phil had a chance to turn pro, he achieved perhaps the greatest achievement yet. In 1991, he won his first PGA Tour event at the Northern Telecom Open, making him only one of 6 people ever to win a PGA Tour event as an amateur. Putting the cherry on top of his amateur career, Phil was low amateur at the Masters and thanks to his PGA Tour win was granted a 2-year tour exemption. Mickelson continued to go to college whilst playing on the PGA Tour, but failed to make a single cut. After graduating from ASU and bypassing Q School, Phil hired Jim Bones Mackay and got straight to work. His early days on tour were full of pressure. People were expecting big things, and Phil didn't disappoint. He began winning straight away and clinching the Buick Invitational in 1993, and cemented his feet well and truly into the PGA Tour. Wins and top 10 finishes were becoming a regular occurrence, and Mickelson was becoming a fan favourite. He took a leaf out of Arnold's book by interacting with the crowd and wanted to give back as much as possible by waving and smiling at the gallery. His high-stake, aggressive golf shots, putting everything on the line, would gather thousands of people just to get a glimpse. 1996 saw the arrival of another college graduate, Tiger Woods. A bit of friendly competition goes a long way, and is healthy to get the best out of someone. Phil won 4 times that year and gave Tiger a glimpse of what to expect. The following year though, the tables had already turned. Tiger had done something Phil had not. Win a major. There was a new fan favourite on the scene, and Phil was pushed aside. But with another huge name taking the centre stage, this would take pressure from Phil. Something he hadn't had his whole career. As the Tiger Chronicle unravelled, and Phil marched on in the shadows. Winning never became a problem. In fact, Phil won a lot, 21 times from 1991 to 2003, along with 17 top 10 finishes in majors, including 6 seconds and 3 third places. But that was the problem. 12 years on tour and no major. Something Tiger had achieved in his first full year. So there's no wonder Phil was already going down as the best player ever not to win a major. But 2004 was different. He started the year winning the Bob Hope Classic, and then en route to the Masters had 6 top 10 finishes from 7 starts. Phil birdied the final hole at Augusta to pip Ernie Els to win his first major championship. He became the 3rd left-hander to win a major championship, and he had finally shrugged that monkey off his back. After finally getting back into the limelight for his golf, Phil had found himself in his first bit of controversy. After leaving voice messages to a Callaway executive who had got his brother some clubs, Mickelson commented on how good the equipment was, and this soon found its way back to long-term sponsor, Titleist. Titleist terminated Phil's sponsorship 16 months early, and then he joined Callaway. This didn't sit too well with his Ryder Cup teammates, as changing clubs so close to the Ryder Cup was extremely risky. This seemed to be the case as Phil's record of 1-3-0 helped Europe to their largest Ryder Cup win to date. Besides that major setback, Phil was still in the form of his life. He won the PGA Championship for his second major at Balsterol in a Monday final round. Mickelson hit one of his trademark soft pitches and made the birdie to finish 4 under, 1 shot ahead of Steve Elkington and Thomas Bjorn. The following spring, and now back in everyone's good books, Phil was just cruising. It was the Tiger-Phil show, and if one wasn't winning, it was the other. They'd created a rivalry based on pure talent. The following spring though, it was Mickelson's turn to shine again and picked up his 3rd major win and 2nd Masters. He shot a 3 under final round and won by 2 strokes over Tim Clark. That win shot him to number 2 in the world rankings, right behind Tiger Woods, but number 2 would be as high as he ever got. Remarkably, Phil never made it to number 1 in the world. So with 2 majors in a row, Lefty headed to Winged Foot, bidding to join Tiger Woods and Ben Hogan as the only players to win 3 consecutive majors. Going down 17 on the final day, Phil had the lead. He missed the fairway left, and his ball landed in the side of a garbage can. He ended up parring the hole, and was heading down 18 with the lead, only needing a par to win. Phil just couldn't help himself but play aggressive. It was like he had an addiction to high stakes. After only hitting 2 out of 13 fairways with his driver, Phil still pulled it from his bag and hit it well left of the fairway. His aggressive approach continued, and things went from bad to worse. He double bogeyed the final hole and finished 1 shot behind eventual winner Jeff Ogilvy. Mickelson was in shock. He couldn't believe what he'd done. This one hurt more than any other. With Phil's frustration with his driving and Tiger's recent split with Butch Harmon, Phil saw an opening. If you can't beat them, join them. It was like something out of an action movie, an old coach teaming up with an arch nemesis to take down the one at the top. Butch and Phil got off to a great start. Just 1 month later, Phil came from behind to win the Players' Championship. That start continued in September when Mickelson won the Deutsche Bank Championship, the second playoff event in the FedEx Cup. He was paired with Tiger and the two went toe-to-toe, but Mickelson ended up finishing 2 strokes ahead of Tiger. 2009 was a year to reflect. Mickelson's wife Amy was diagnosed with breast cancer, but thankfully was found in the early stages, and Phil took some time to work on himself. He planned to lose 20 pounds with the help of trainer Sean Cochran. Once he started seeing the modern day players coming through, he needed to make changes to prolong his career. Upon his return, he entered the 2009 US Open. Mickelson shot a final round 70 and recorded his 5th runner-up finish at the US Open. He shared the lead after an eagle at the 13th hole, but fell back with bogeys on 15 and 17. Months after returning, it was announced that his mother Mary had also been diagnosed with breast cancer and would have surgery at the same hospital as his wife. After hearing the news, Phil took another leave of absence from the tour. The challenges Phil was being put through mentally were the toughest tests yet. The whole of the PGA had his back, and every player was there to support. It was back to work quickly though, and once again going up against his arch nemesis Tiger Woods. Mickelson entered the final round of the Tour Championship, 4 strokes off the lead, but shot an incredible round of 65 to win the event by 3 strokes over Tiger Woods. This was Mickelson's 2nd time winning the Tour Championship, but would finish 2nd behind Tiger Woods in the FedEx Cup standings. His trip back to Augusta in 2010 saw him face off against a man who was now in a position that Phil once was. Lee Westwood was looking for his first major still and was one stroke clear of Phil as they entered the final round. Mickelson put on a fabulous show, birdieing 12, 13, 15 and 18 to win his third Masters and fourth major. He was greeted by his wife Amy with a prolonged kiss that will go down in history. It was a win for the family and an emotional win for everybody. After that win, Mickelson had multiple opportunities to become the #1 player in the world following the travails of Tiger Woods. However, a string of disappointing finishes by Mickelson saw the #1 spot eventually go to Englishman Lee Westwood. His run of bad form though was understandable when Phil was diagnosed with psoriatic arthritis, a condition where the body swells and can leave fingers and toes looking oddly shaped. Phil changed his diet to vegetarian and would begin fasting, something that definitely helped in the long run. The question now was, how would Phil bounce back? He'd reached his peak in many people's eyes, but not his own. Mickelson wasn't ready to settle down yet. In 2012, in the final round of the AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am, Mickelson rallied from 6 shots back, winning the tournament by 2 strokes with a final score of 64. The win marked his 40th career victory on the PGA Tour, a huge milestone. It had rose to the surface that Phil was dealing with a gambling problem. At the time, nobody knew the figure, but now it's believed that between the years of 2010 and 2014, Phil lost a staggering $40 million. Whatever was going on in his personal life really didn't seem to be bothering him on the course though. In the first round of the Waste Management Phoenix Open, Mickelson tied his career low round of 60. Mickelson led the tournament wire to wire and completed a 4-shot win over Brandt Snedeker for his 41st PGA Tour victory and 3rd Phoenix Open title. Mickelson's score of 28 under par tied Mark Calcavecchia's tournament scoring record, and that win moved him back inside the world's top 10 after falling down to as far as number 22. He'd also lead the US Open going into the final day once again, but would start the day by 2-putting the 3rd and the 5th holes, double bogeying both and finishing up in a tie for 2nd. It just seemed to be that competition that he just couldn't get over the line, a lot like Rory with the Masters. But again, Phil shows great courage. After what can only be another miserable time, he picks himself up and moves on to the next competition. The week before the Open, Mickelson played the Scottish Open to warm up, but it seemed his cogs were turning just fine. He didn't need warming up. He won the competition by beating Brendan Grace in a sudden death playoff and was now as confident as ever going into the Open. See, some people think it's bad luck to win the Scottish Open before the Open, because nobody has ever done it. But Phil has done things his own way all his life. Mickelson birdied 4 of the last 6 holes in a brilliant final round of 66 to win the title by 3 strokes. He shed tears on the 18th green, saying this was arguably the best round of golf of his career. And he might not have been wrong. See, nobody could have predicted the dip in form that was about to come next. To miss the Masters Cup for the first time since 1997 wasn't a great start, and then a run of bad form and inconsistency forced him to leave Butch Harmon and try something new with Andrew Getson. The two worked round the clock in 2015 ahead of the new season, and things did start to get better. He finished solo 2nd at the AT&T Pebble Beach and shot 63 in the opening round of the Open Championship at Royal Troon, setting a new course record. But just as things were looking up, Mickelson was struck with injuries. He had 2 sports hernia operations and was set to be out for a long while. But Mickelson was still winless in 4 years, and he didn't want to go out this way. He bounced back quickly and began putting in shifts. His first 6 events back all ended up in the top 25, but there was still some questions to be asked. Surprisingly, Phil withdrew from the US Open, the only one he needed to complete the Grand Slam, but understandably as it was his daughter's graduation. But then weeks later, longtime caddy Jim Bones Mackay left on mutual grounds. He would then go on to miss the cut at the Open and the PGA Championship. After a run of bad form, Phil did find himself as the captain's pick for the President's Cup. This maintained a streak of 23 consecutive USA teams in the President's Cup and Ryder Cup dating back to 1994. So it was over. The scandals, the gambling, the change of coaches. Everything pointed to a what happened to Phil Mickelson. But in the shadows, Phil knew exactly what he was doing. He stepped up his workout regime and took to social media to gain the respect of his fans and turn people around. His new presence was clearly working. Mickelson ended a 5-year winless streak that dated back to 2013 by winning the WGC Mexico. In doing so, he became the oldest WGC winner at the age of 47, proving age was just a number, and the old dog still had life in him yet. After returning to form, Mickelson was once again captain's pick for the Ryder Cup team, picked by Jim Furyk, but the return of Tiger sparked a new interest. Like Pacquiao versus Mayweather, or Tyson versus Holyfield, There was still blood to be shed and find out once and for all who was better. Tiger and Phil televised a winner-takes-all match of $9 million and put their rivalry to bed once and for all. Mickelson needed 4 extra holes to beat Tiger, but eventually tamed the big cat, winning more than just money, but a sense of pride. Albeit a win, there seemed to be a different feeling about Phil's return to golf this time around. Trophies didn't seem to matter, and money was being flashed around. In December 2019, Mickelson announced via Twitter that after turning down opportunities to go to the Middle East for many years, he would decide to play in the 2020 Saudi International on the European Tour, and in doing so missed the Waste Management Phoenix Open for the first time since 1989. His decision was heavily criticised for getting lured by millions of dollars and ignoring continuous human rights abuses in the nation. So with more money coming in and gambling speculations resurfacing, Phil turned 50 and was now looking at the Champions Tour for a quick buck. He won his first 2 starts, absolutely obliterating the field, proving he wasn't quite ready for the Zimmer frame just yet. So the informed senior player was playing some of the best golf of his life. Albeit on a senior tour, he won 3 out of his first 4 events, and honestly, it just looked unfair. In May though, he entered the PGA Championship and stepped up against the best in the world. Mickelson led after 54 holes and had Brooks Koepka chasing him down. Something felt a little different about Sunday. Phil shot a final round of 73 to capture the tournament, defending off Brooks Koepka and Louis Oosthuizen. But walking down 18, the crowd were engulfed in the moment, cheering and clapping as Phil walked to the green. He kept tipping his hat and smiling and waving, almost like a thank you, but also a goodbye. Phil tapped in and in doing so became the oldest major champion of all time. As the fog cleared from 2021 and we entered a new year, rumours of a new golf league was beginning to grow in popularity. When interviewed about it, Phil shook the golfing world with his comments. They are scary mofos and execute people. But I still back the Live Tour movement. After his comments, Amstel and KPMG terminated their contracts with Phil, and Mickelson went into hiding. He withdrew from all the majors and said he was taking time to spend with his family. But whilst we gave Phil time, he was working on something else. In 2022, Greg Norman announced the start date for Live Tour in London, and Phil was the headline name. The PGA Tour immediately suspended Phil and 16 other people, but Mickelson still began sticking up for the movement, and that it wasn't a money-based decision, even though the sum is believed to be close to 200 million. Whether you're pro-Live or against, it's a terrible way for Phil to end his PGA Tour career. He'll definitely win again on Live Tour, and maybe one day we'll see the tours combine, and Phil can make his return. But right now, Phil thinks he's doing the right thing, and that he is part of the future of golf. Right now, we don't know what will happen. But what we do know is you can't take away anything that Phil has achieved, and that he will undoubtedly go down as one of the best golfers of all time.